All right, you guys, Daniela here, and welcome to another episode of the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. I am like so excited for this episode. I don't even know what to expect, but I know it's going to be awesome. I have Salt Freedom with me, and if that doesn't tell you how awesome this episode is going to be, then I don't know what will. Salt, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Ever since I met you, live a few weeks ago, I've been thinking about you and just how warm and approachable and intelligent that you present yourself. And I'm really, really excited to serve your audience. So ask me anything, and thanks so much for the blessing to be here.
Awesome. So, Salt, you are, just for our audience to know, you're a branding expert. That is your kind of zone of genius. And the first thing that I want to ask you is about, so I talk a lot about branding with estheticians who are starting their own spa, because really as a provider, you are your own brand. And so I kind of describe being your own brand or your brand as all of the visual elements, what you want people to feel when they meet you, what you want people to feel when they see your logo and all of this kind of stuff. And just kind of the energy that you give off. And for you guys that are listening, be sure to go to YouTube or go to Facebook and watch the video. You can see the video with Salt. She is this amazingly beautiful, strong, vibrant woman. And you see the background, everything is branded to a T. So she's got the branding thing down. But let me ask you, how is Salt Freedom your legal birth name?
Wow, that was like 3 questions in one. Okay.
I know.
So first of all, I want to acknowledge, I love that you support your audience to understand the power and the importance of branding. I think we really do earn the right to be heard, and the visuals are part of how we do that. And, we're a very quick to scroll, ADD, low attention span society. And so if we don't show up with visuals that are, audacious, outrageous, attractive, and that have, like you were saying, that emotional component to them, then no one's going to stop, And so I think aligning your soul with your brand is so important. Like what you were saying, how I show up or the background. I mean, this is my soul in visual form. And for a long time, I was telling myself, like, don't be so outrageous. Don't be so crazy. People are going to think that you're like, nutso.
People love it.
Well, and it was causing me to do all these strange things that I wasn't proud of. And so I didn't actually want to be seen. So that's the first thing, is like, in order to want to be seen, you get to align your visuals with your soul. So that way you can be proud of them instead of like being embarrassed or trying to explain them all the time. Like I used to send people to my website and be like, don't judge, but you can go to, here's my website. And it's like, oh gosh, I feel like I have to preemptively explain why this is going to be so bad because branding is such a big deal.
One of the things though, is that, I always teach, we all have something special and unique to offer. Mm-hmm. And when you figure out what that is, that becomes your competitive advantage, and you don't have to compete with price. So many estheticians, they don't know what is special and unique about them, because it doesn't have to be the facial or they're the best at lashes or whatever it is. There's so many other things. Is it the environment? Is it the customer experience? Is it the type of people that you attract? There's so many things that can set you apart, and that then becomes your brand. Would you agree?
I totally agree. I mean, I think about times where I've gone to like a service provider, say even for my hair, for instance. Like my hair is very specific. I need very specific help for my hair. And I've had tactically excellent help from a human that I did not want to spend time with every week. And so I don't go back, so I feel like, yes, skill set's important, and having, the ability to get the end result for your client is very important. And who you're being as you're doing that is even more important, in my experience.
Okay, so let's go back to the name.
Back to my name. Yes. Okay, so to answer your question, my mom is cool, but she's not that cool. She did not name me Salt. And yes, it is my legal name. It is on my driver's license, my passport, and every other piece of ID I have, because I changed my name to be in alignment with who I am as the result of the journey I've been through in life.
So what does Salt, how did you choose that name? How did you come into alignment? Because I know that this process A lot of estheticians, while they may not be changing their name personally as an individual, they put a lot of thought into naming their business to align with them. So I imagine that there's a lot of similarity there.
Yes, I think that oftentimes because we want to present something to the world, that we want to skip being a beginner and we want to look like a professional and really brand ourselves in a way that makes us feel proud. Sometimes we can sit in a vacuum in our office and be like hypothesizing about ways to do that instead of beginning by serving. And that's how I found my name, is by serving exactly who I was in that moment, and no longer being willing to push off being a blessing to others and to helping other humans with the gifts I had. And through doing that, through being a blessing and through serving, my ways of being started to come out full force. It was magnifying who I was and how I served. And so SALT came about because I am a very blunt server. When I see my client struggling with something, I will go right to the source of what that is. And sometimes that can feel like shocking. It can feel, what my clients started to call it, salty. It can sting a little bit. When you deal with the wound care, SALT is involved in wound care. It's involved in exfoliation. I talked a lot with my early clients, which was actually a health business in the eating disorder space, because I suffered myself with an eating disorder for 13 years. And when I found freedom from my eating disorder and agreed to be of service in the world, I started to really look at the limiting beliefs that had been holding me back and start to help my clients see those too. And a lot of times looking at those things feels very confronting. It can feel uncomfortable. And so it became the salty truths, that will set you free.
I see that in the background.
Yes, the salty truth. And so all of those ways of being, rubbing off old labels and limiting beliefs, dealing with wounds, soul wounds, physical wounds, and the importance of SALT for that. SALT it conducts electricity and energy. All of those ways of being ended up coming into a name for me, which was SALT. And I'll tell you, I was playing with the idea of changing my name and thinking that it was too crazy. Like people were just not going to get it. And one day I was sitting on the couch and I literally feel like God put a USB in my brain and was like, your name is SALT. And I was like, oh, come on. That's just ridiculous. I can't do that. People are going to think I'm crazy. And then my daughter came over and handed me a Bible and said, Mom, will you read this book to me? And there's a lot of biblical reference to salt in the Bible.
Salt of the earth. Yeah.
Yeah, totally, like salt of the earth. And there's so much symbolism behind salt, biblically and also just practically speaking. And still I laughed it off. And then I went upstairs to my office and I hit send and receive on my email. And I only got one email, and it was a Groupon. And the Groupon subject line said, Salt Room Therapy. And it was a coupon to go sit in a room full of salt because that is, cleansing for your lungs. And I was like, okay, I get it. So while I don't want to limit everyone to signs and wonders to permission to do things, I think sometimes it's easy to ignore the messages that are being sent to you because you invalidate them because of your fear of how people will receive you if you say yes to those things. And so all of my client feedback, my willingness to serve, even though I didn't have it all figured out yet, and my willingness to be open to the messages that were being sent to me had me change my name. And it's been a name that people have called me for years before I actually legally changed it. I started to be very uncomfortable with this, what felt like two lives going on, like people calling me Salt and people calling me something else. So I always laugh when someone says, what's your real name? Because I think it's so funny that real is what we assign to the humans who bring us into the world instead of giving ourselves permission to define and create who we are and choose our own name. Why is that now not real? To me, that's far more real.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'm from Hawaii, and one of my very best girlfriends, her name's Morningstar, and that was her birth given name. And I know someone named Ocean. I know someone, there's so many different, in Hawaii, it's more accepted, I guess, to have a name that's not in the traditional, like John or Sally or whatever these names are.
Right.
But I think it's really interesting as being a branding expert, to find something that you align with. And it suits you perfectly. It was a beautiful explanation.
Thank
So
you.
with my business, when I was naming my business, it's Atto Aesthetics, and Atto in Latin means to inspire. And so everything I knew, while I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my business. So my husband is in the military, and we had 6 weeks notice to move. So I always had kind of entrepreneurial blood. I always thought like, hey, that's something that I'll do, in 10 years from now. I wanted to get more experience or whatever, in my career. And I had a great job. I was, working for Belisante as director of medical services. I oversaw 3 locations, had 200 employees, like amazing dream job. And then we had 5 weeks notice to move. And I was like, what the heck am I going to do? Because starting completely over. So I ended up saying, okay, I'm going to look at this as an opportunity. I'm going to start my business. I know I want to do something inspirational. And so I put a lot of energy into that name, even though it was about what I wanted to do, how I wanted to serve, even though I couldn't figure out my exact path in the beginning. But one thing that has remained constant is everything that I do, I want it to be inspirational. It goes back to that name. So I think for estheticians, when they are, or spa owners, when you're looking at choosing your name, figure out what is unique and special about you. Figure out your brand. That can be the very first step. And you don't have to have it all figured out, right? You were saying it was something that just, our coach says action creates clarity. Mm-hmm. And I love that. That's one of my favorite sayings that I keep passing on, because you don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to have your brand to a T. These things evolve and change, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think if you look back in your life, you'll see that there are, through lines that are always with you. Like for me, it would be edgy femininity. It would be a spirit that's a little bit rebellious, not because I want to tear something down, but because I'm like, well, why can't it be this way? Or what about this? So it's always very, thought leadership is a core value of mine. And I can see how I've been through elements in my life that have activated that or reinforced that or asked me to be that. And so names are the same, I think, like if you look back in your life and you can see the spirit of ways that you've addressed problems or what continually are those patterns in your life, I think names can come from that. I think passions, business focuses, all of that. I think, as an entrepreneur, there's so much wisdom in looking back, not with eyes of judgment, but with curiosity, like pure curiosity at what it's always been asking me to give it more attention, but I haven't because I've been living in fear or, for me, it would be perfectionism. I struggled a lot with that, or having creative insecurity, like who am I to blah, 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 So if we allow ourselves to be curious, I think it'll show up with flashing lights and support us to move forward.
So are there any exercises or activities or things that you would recommend for people to do who are trying to get a better grasp on what their brand is?
Yeah. So I think it's important first to define. I think everyone defines brand differently. So I think, yes, the optics of your brand, the visual identity is so important. I also believe that the thought leadership or the depth of your message and your points of view are also, very important. And then also having that, I call it apologetics, but it's like the messaging that supports the why behind what you believe and why you're creating this. Like that's all part of the brand conversation. And so I think of reverse engineering from bad brands. So if you think about bad brands, it's like, what are they? Well, they're boring. right? First of all, like a bad brand is always boring. It's always, you can scroll right by it and not even notice it. Mm-hmm. And you can be boring with your voice or you can be boring with your visuals, but either way, when you're boring, no one's paying attention to you. So you can't be effective. You can't be influential. You can't impact the world or be the source of change if no one's paying attention to you. So boring is like the first no in my mind. The second would be being superficial. So, like you were saying in the beginning, like what emotions do you want your clients to feel? And like what conversations do you want to have with them? And what possibilities do you want to open up for them? For you, like how do I show up and be a conversation starter and a question asker such that I'm inspiring people? So it would be easy for you or your clients to be superficial and to reduce themselves to like, what people might judge as vanity, which is so much more than that.
Oh, it's so much more. Gosh. Yeah. We talk about that a lot in what we do, because there is this judgment that if you go to beauty school, then you're just a pretty face or, you're not intelligent. And some of the women that I have met are just beyond. Like that has been one thing for me doing speaking engagements and getting in front of these women and some men, but mostly women. They have to understand science and a lot of times at a medical level. And they have to understand skin and skin conditions and ingredients and chemistry and how all of these things work together, on top of the fact that they're running their entire business and showing up for their clients. So they have to be highly intelligent, but they're also getting this feedback from the world that you're just vain, you're just, all these just things. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, we as aestheticians, as people in this industry, in the beauty industry, we're doing so much more than beauty. We are giving women confidence. We're lifting them up to show up as themselves, the best version of themselves. Because when you believe that you look good, when you feel good about the way that you're showing up for the world, you go out and do so much more. And this was a big thing for me when I was living in Boston, because Boston is kind of the brain of the country, right? Then you've got Harvard, you got MIT. So all these really highly intelligent people. And so many of them have acne, or if there's a lot of skin conditions, or the females, this was one thing that just like really hit me. So many women in very, very highly intelligent fields in computer science and all of this stuff, they were afraid to wear makeup or look feminine for fear of being judged that they wouldn't be smart enough. Mm-hmm. So what is wrong with our society in that place? I know I just kind of went on a tangent here, but that was something for me that's like, how can we change this? That, these women are amazingly intelligent. Why can't you be brilliant and beautiful at the same time? And why, if you're in the beauty industry, do you have to be dumb or vain? It just doesn't make sense to me. It's one of those things that I don't know how to change it besides just continuing to talk about it and showcase like amazing women that are in our industry. But it's something that I would love to see changed.
Well, you are changing it. I mean, this podcast is changing it. These conversations are changing it. I'm sure your audience is getting the tools and the courage to, be outrageous and get attention, or share their opinion about what real beauty is, and to redefine what it means to have the and conversation instead of the or conversation. It's not like you have to look like a hot mess so you get to be smart, or if you're pretty, somehow you lost your brain. It's just not true. And so the more, women show up who are both and who are defining both on their own terms, I think a lot of times we outsource the definition of beauty. We outsource the definition of intelligence. We have so many examples of people who didn't even graduate high school and who are absolutely wildly successful in their entrepreneurial adventures because they were willing to show up and be them, which I think is the brand killers when you try to be perfect.
One thing that I love that I've been kind of noticing in the like entertainment world is what's the wife of George Clooney? She's like this amazing lawyer and so beautiful.
I don't remember her name.
She's British but she's Syrian. She's like, I can't remember.
I'm gonna look it up while you talk.
Okay. But she is like doing awesome things to change the world. She's absolutely beautiful. And she's like a fashion icon. And now she's a mom to twins. I can't believe I can't remember her name. I totally know it. But she, like, I love seeing women like that show up as like A-list celebrities, women who are just.
Is it Amal?
Amal Clooney.
Amal. Okay, got it.
Yeah, she's awesome. And so, I know we started talking about branding, but I feel like this is kind of going into a conversation for women in general about to understand your brand, but really to be able to understand your brand, you have to understand yourself and you have to do that inner work. You mentioned limiting beliefs in the beginning. That was something for me that I didn't even know existed until about 5 years ago. It was something that one of my girlfriends, I had called her to talk about something and she's like, well, you're just coming up on a limiting belief. And I was like, what the heck is that?
You're like, record scratch. I don't get what you're saying.
But there's so many things that you do have to do the personal work, because being an entrepreneur is a kick in the butt, and being a mom can be a kick in the butt. You really have to be clear on who you are and what you want in life. And if you're starting a business and you're doing that, you've got to do that inner work to really get clarity on what your brand is.
100%. I think that the visual assets that you use to define the optical identity of your brand get to come from your ways of being. It's not like, this is my favorite color and this is my favorite font. It's like, in our branding system, we have, the ugly font. Like when you're saying something that you stand against because you know what you're for and what you're against, when that word comes up, it's got the ugly font because you are training your audience that when they see that word, like I love mine is like kind of like grungy and spray painty. And it's like, I'm saying the word haters with that font, and so it's like, or, why do I choose graffiti, like why, like it's very clear with my visuals what I'm going to start to say or how I'm going to show up. And that should be different from and gets to be different from your visuals, And so I think knowing who you are, knowing what drives you, the why behind your business, the points of view that you have, the conversations you want to have, that allows you then to go, what's my color palette? Like mine is neon. It's very confronting. It's very bright. It's very interruptive. It's that way for a reason. I have other clients who are like very white space, minimalist, thin lines. Like there's a reason for that. Some clients are black and white. There's a reason for that. So allowing it.
Spa, it's so easy to get drawn into this. I should have, orchids and someone with cucumbers on their eyes and this soft thing. But it's one of the spas that I work with, as a consulting client, they use hot pink and they stand out and they're amazing with their branding, so it's okay to not go with the pack, I guess is what you're saying. It's really about like figuring out what makes sense for you. You don't have to have the spa music. You don't have to have, the soft colors or whatever. It's about what you align with as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to do that work, like you said, because in my experience, brands who don't do that work, they either look like a travel brochure or a tampon commercial. There's like butterflies, sandy beaches.
And that's going to be our audio clip for this episode.
It's really so easy to do that, right? It's so easy to copy what you see, think that if that made someone else successful, then that's going to make you successful, when if it's not aligned with who you are, it's actually the path to no success.
Well, I think that the real issue that comes up, besides people not really knowing who they are, what they're aligned with, what their message is, I think that there's a lot of fear around, am I going to make it? I've got to support my family. I need money coming in. I want to get money coming in and then we'll figure out what works. And so they start their business, or they are operating their business from a place of fear. And that because it can be fearful, right? What if you're a single mom, even if you're not a single mom, but there's so many things that money, you have a business to earn a livelihood, right? You do it to help people as well. You do it to express who you are. But at the end of the day, if you're not making money, it's a hobby.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that finding, I don't know what the best way to do it, but you've got to figure out your internal stuff before you do your brand and try and operate not from that place of fear. And that's what's going to make the change.
I could not agree more. I remember when I first started out, I mean, when you first start, right, you have such a small sampling of feedback and you can really take it personally, right? So like 5 people have seen your stuff and you get someone that disagrees with it. Now you're like, oh my gosh, 20% of people are going to attack me, right? And you can like make a mountain out of a molehill. And I remember this one person saying, because I was coaching in the area of eating disorders, and I remember this one person saying, if you really cared, you would do this for free. And I remember that activated all of my money stories, like, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible person. I should be doing this as a mission field and not as a business. And how can I possibly profit off of people's pain and lack of health? And like, but you quickly realize as an entrepreneur, it takes money to change the world. It takes money to hire exceptional coaches, to run tech, to get help with producing media. I mean, it costs money. Just because it's digital doesn't mean that you don't have the same level of investment as if you opened a brick and mortar on the corner. It's still going to require an investment. And so you can't change the world if you don't make money and you're living in a cardboard box, or you're going somewhere to wear a name tag and work 9 to 5. I mean, and then giving the scraps of your energy to this thing that you say you care about. So you get to value yourself. You get to, yes, incrementally move up. And when you first start and you launch your first program, you won't charge the same as when, you're a year or 2 in and you've created a brand and a name for yourself. And you get to receive money, knowing that it is the way that you change the world. Because it might be free to have an opinion, but it's not free to be a world changer.
That's beautiful. So anything else? I feel like this, we have just covered from A to Z, going back and forth and back and forth. But anything else you want to share to make this episode complete for you, for estheticians who are really wanting to make change?
I am very passionate about redefining beauty. I was so excited to be here because, having had an eating disorder, having, launched a business and worked with so many beautiful, talented, intelligent women who felt so ugly, so not good enough, and lacked confidence in every way because of the politics of how we define beauty. And I love that your podcast is about bringing symbolism and depth to the women behind the beauty industry, and about giving them permission to be bold and have points of view and show off their brain as much as their beauty, and give them the and conversation instead of the or. I think that one of the most powerful ways to start to reinvent that conversation is to look at language and to define it on our own terms. So I would love for everyone in your audience to journal about what beauty is to them, and literally stop playing the tapes of every person they admire in the media and everything they've already heard, and really ask themselves, what is beautiful to me? Because I feel like I've been branding myself since I was 14. I've always had some sort of neon colored hair, or a shaved head, or like whacked out clothes. I felt like the black sheep everywhere I went. People thought, differently of me than I actually was because of their interpretations of how I was showing up. And I would have loved it if I could have a conversation about, like, what do I think is beautiful, and how can I be okay when other people don't agree? And how, because if you can't find your tribe, if you don't know what you believe and say it with confidence and loud, so that the people who see life and beauty the same way you do can find you, and you can create this beautiful community, then you do feel like a lone wolf if you're only half in. So I would love for your audience to go all in on who they are, really, really know who that is. And one of the ways to do that is by looking at language. So like words we think, we already know the definition to, like like the word beauty or like the word confidence. Like, what does confidence look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What does it walk like? What does it speak like? How does it love? All
and
of those.
I like to add in removing the word just.
Yes.
I'm
it's
just
such a limiting word.
I'm just a, what, because a lot of times we say that, oh, I'm sorry, I can't, if you work with a doctor or a nurse, oh, I'm just a esthetician, I'm just a whatever. Like, take that word out of your language. And every single person is beautiful. It's all about just, if you give someone beautiful skin, you can have them shining and glowing. You can show their inner glow, and everyone with beautiful skin, you give them a little, lip gloss and some glowing skin and they're ready to go. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the work that the beauty industry does to allow women to show up in a way that has them feeling confident and proud of how they look and be distinct from everyone else. Like, we don't want to make row homes of humans here. We want to make like beautiful boutique one-off humans. And then, it's already challenging as a human to be visible and to have potentially people who don't agree with you. And there's all the inner work that goes along with that. So add on the fact that you feel like you look horrible, and it's going to be really a big challenge to show up and use your voice and be heard and take all of that on. So I know if I didn't look like this, I wouldn't be as loud as I am. And I'm very helpful for the team that keeps all of me running. Like, so grateful beyond what you could ever imagine.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Salt. I really, really appreciate this. I think it's something that my audience will love to hear and love, I hope it gives them permission to just be themselves and show up, and don't be afraid if you're different. That's what makes you beautiful, in my opinion, in my definition of beauty.
I love your definition of beauty, and I completely concur.
All right, you guys. Well, we're going to include all of Salt's links in the show notes. So if you want to stay up to date with her, you want to follow her, find out what she is doing, you're definitely going to want to check out her Instagram, her YouTube channel. And I know she's going to be launching a podcast here pretty soon. So be sure to check that out if you want to get even more into branding. And I will see you guys on the next episode.
Bye.